second time's the charm. Okay, I'm going to invite the lady of the hour, Miss Leo Queen, Sara. Okay. We were having some technical difficulties last time, but we're going to try again. Let's go! Okay, knock on wood a million times. Okay. Oh, my husband just came out.
Button. Anything. I'm letting it go. So, people are always like, I don't really believe in Mercury retrograde, blah, blah, blah. This is peak Mercury retrograde. This is peak, like, it's real, it's happening, it's a thing. Don't deny it.
Question.
Yes.
Do you see, like, Mercury retrograde and, like, full moons and stuff, do you see that manifest in sessions?
Oh my gosh, yes. I 100% do. Like, especially full moon, like the week of the few days like before and after a full moon, people just come in like super intense. People come in super like charged just with emotion. It's not always bad. Sometimes it's good, but just like the intensity of whatever emotion they have is like dialed up for sure. And then I think too with Mercury retrograde, I find so many more schedule changes than usual and like tech problems. Like if I'm doing virtual sessions when it's Mercury retrograde, it's like laggy or I can't hear what they're saying or like something like this happens. Like I don't know what it is. It's weird. I don't know. Do you see it manifest too or?
Girl, honestly, I used to not. I did in Mercury retrograde, especially around like technological problems. But this last one, I think I was like texting you and Ian like, oh my God, like what is going on? Like something's in the water or it's the moon, like something's happening right now because I'm done with this week and it was like Tuesday. So
that was me like this week. Like, okay,
oh, no.
Like all of my clients canceled on Thursday and I was like, cool, great. I don't need Thursdays. So happy. I was like, thank you.
Thursdays. Like, that's fine.
I really need a day.
Maybe that was like the universe being like, take the day off because you're not going to take it yourself.
It really was.
I'm going to make your clients take off for you.
I was like, thank you. Message me. I literally stayed in bed and watched The Office like all day. Like I got up to walk the dogs and I got up to like make coffee, but no, I pretty much stayed in bed and watched The Office all day. That was like my ultimate self-care. It was lovely.
That's awesome. Yeah. We were watching Office for a while and then, well, it's not on Netflix anymore, so it's somewhere else.
Yeah, it's Peacock. That's where we got it.
And then
I think.
Huh?
I think Peacock is free.
Jamie likes The Office too. She likes The Office. Yeah.
But no. Here's the question. Who are you on The Office? Like, if you had to be a character, who would you be?
Who are you?
I'm for 1,000%.
You're who?
Kelly Kapoor.
Yes, you are.
1,000%. Like, totally.
Carl says Peacock is free. Jenny says she's Stanley. Jamie says Jim.
Jamie is Jim. Got the hair and everything too. Jamie and Jim both have like the good hair going. I love it. Hi, Courtney. Hello. We're talking about The Office. Obviously, very.
Can you see comments now?
I can finally see comments.
Oh,
yeah, they're
dope. Okay, weird. Okay. So, okay, I don't think I did the little intro, but y'all, this is episode 2 of Talks with Tay, and y'all are looking at the Leo Queen herself.
Hello.
Sara. She works at AFC with me. She's an LPC Associate. And Sara, please tell us all a little bit more about you.
Sarah's Kelly. I'm Ryan. He kind of is. I'm here for it. Love. Oh my God, that's funny. Oh my God. Okay, so a little about me. So am originally from Houston, Texas, so I throw that out there first. That's my city. I graduated from Texas State University, my Bobcats. In 2013, I got my undergraduate degree. I got a Bachelor of Arts in Communication Studies with an emphasis in interpersonal communication. So it's all about like, how do we use communication to build relationships with each other, and how does communication affect things like family and gender and relationships, all that good stuff. So kind of like the psychology of communication. And then I got my minor in sociology as well. And took a little break, did a couple little side jobs here and there for a few years, and decided to go for my master's in counseling at St. Ed's. Hilltoppers, I think, but nobody really like reps St. Ed's like that. I mean, but like it's not like a thing, So
Yeah.
Hilltoppers, I think they're goats. I have no idea what their sign. I don't know, but anyway, A+ St. Ed's prepared me well. I got licensed in like July of 2019, and I have been bopping around ever since, just counseling here and there and everywhere. It's been fun.
That's cool. I didn't realize, like, you explained like your just the communication, like the psychology of communication. Like,
yeah.
That's amazing. I've never heard it explained like that, but tell me like a little bit more about that. Like, how does that help you doing what you do now? Because I'm sure they intertwine quite a bit.
And it was so interesting because when I was wanting to go back to grad school and I was looking like, do I get a social work degree? Do I get a counseling degree? Like, I'm talking to different departments here and there, asking questions, and they were like, how is your degree relevant? Like, I got that several times. And I was like, how is it not relevant? Because like, therapy is communication, right? And like, relationships is communication. And whether you're a relationship with your partner or your spouse or your family or whatever, or like even just a communication with yourself, and like learning more about how you need your communication, and how like learning about how to interact with other people and like develop relationships or develop a relationship with yourself, like that's all super important. So anyway, like, yeah, I when I was an undergrad, there was kind of like two different kind of routes you could take with it. You could do like kind of an organizational communication route. So it's like, how does communication come into play like in businesses or in organizations? So it's a lot of people I know went into like training, corporate training, HR, public relations, things like that, that I went to undergrad with. But I really was always drawn to the other types of classes that we had. That was like family communication, relational.
Getting my notepad out because you're on such a roll, and I got questions. But keep going.
Love it. So yeah, like it was all about like, how does communication come into play in these different contexts? And that was always really like fascinating to me. I remember when I left grad school, I actually went to grad school the first time. Fun fact, I went to graduate school at Texas State to study comm studies. And I realized when I was in that program that first semester, like, I really want to do therapy. Like, I want to use this to help people. I don't really want to use this to like help businesses. I want to use this to like help people. And so I was like, why would I like help them when I could like help? Right? So that's like what kind of inspired me to go into this route, because I was like, it's definitely applicable. I took like communication and conflict management. That is huge. Like, conflict management is something that we talk about, I'm sure, with our clients all the time, like that's a really cool. Yeah. Being able to kind of marry like some of the stuff that we learn in like psych classes and abnormal and all that stuff with like how to communicate, I think is what gives me kind of like a different perspective than a lot of other therapists. Because it's, for me, not just about like, what's our psychology behind it, or what's our like, yeah, like what's just our like individual psychology about it, but also like what is like the other part of it, like how do we share that with other people, and how do we use that effectively to be able to get the supports that we need from anybody else, and build relationships with people and build relationships with ourselves.
You explained that so awesomely, like, or beautifully.
Really long-winded, but so
no, I actually, you just helped me tie two things together, because in your area of expertise section on the post that we put out on Wednesday, it Sarah enjoys working with teens, young adults, couples, and families with a variety of concerns, including anxiety disorders, emotional regulation, conflict management, communication skills, boundary setting, and identity exploration. Sarah's approach encompasses what she calls the 3 C's: the connection, community, and creativity. And so I didn't realize how much those things actually intertwine with just like everything that you just explained. Like it marries so beautifully.
Totally. Yeah, it really does. It's really like the foundation of what the type of work that I like to do with my clients. Because about it, like boundary setting, right? Like that's huge. I love working with that type of stuff. But part of boundary setting is like identifying what boundaries you need for yourself, right? Like what feels good for you? What do you need in order to feel safe and secure and like all that good stuff? The second part of that is like, how do you communicate that to other people, right? Like it's not just boundary identification, it's boundary setting. So like, how do you communicate that to people? How do you do that effectively? How do you do that in a way that maintains the safety of the relationship and maintains the other person's safety in the relationship, right? And like learn to have that conversation. It's an art, you know. It's like there's science behind it, but it's also kind of an art form, you know. So I think that you're right, it does kind of all like blend together really easily and seamlessly, you know.
And you're so right about how boundary identification and then the delivery of that boundary are almost like 2 different things. Because what I tell a lot of times my teen clients too is like, in order to like ask for what we need, we have to know what we need first. And so it's like they'll get to understand what they need, which is a process, and that takes a minute, that takes a while. But then, you know, I feel like people talk about boundaries and you need boundaries and yes to all of that. And then it's like, okay, but how do I like actually do that?
Yeah.
And then that's where people like scramble
Yeah.
in my eyeballs, or my experience. My eyeballs. in my eyes, in my eyeballs. That's what I've seen. People are like, oh my God, like, I don't know. And then just,
it's not scary thinking about your own boundaries necessarily. Like, I mean, it's a little nerve-wracking. You're like, oh, never thought about that, right? Like, what are they? But the scary part is when you have to set them. That's hard. And that takes a lot of practice. And that's why I love, like, thinking about, you know, like interpersonal neurobiology and like, how do we stay regulated? How do we learn how to manage our own emotions and our own anxieties and our own fears? And how do we use that to be able to communicate, you know, like how can we use that like to our advantage, you know, and like understanding that process help gets us over the fear of like communicating what we're needing in those moments, right? Like it's totally a twofold process. And you know, and the other piece too that you brought up about boundaries is like that part about learning like what that looks like, right? Like what am I needing and what, and I love to kind of bring, and the part about communicating it too is like, for example, with teens, like you brought it up about how hard it is for them to communicate with that, right? Like how hard it is for them to have those conversations. Well, that's where a lot of the like sociology stuff comes into play that I really like, right? Is talking about how to like, what are the power dynamics that are at play there in a family system where it makes it really hard for a teen to communicate with their parents because their parents inherently have more power in that dynamic, right? Or if you have a teen that, like I have a kiddo that is like wanting to set a boundary with like a coach that they have like for one of their athletics, and like talk about a power dynamic, right? And then throwing in that like they're a girl, right? Like females sometimes have a harder time setting boundaries because we're socialized not to, right? Like our society doesn't want us to voice our opinion like that. Our society doesn't want us to necessarily challenge the status quo, like, or if they're of a different ethnicity or of a different religion or a different race, like all these things come into play with deciding like what our boundaries are and then how we feel about communicating them. So that's why I also like to bring in a lot of kind of like, hey, what are like the big macro level systemic stuff that has influenced like how willing we are to have those conversations with ourselves and with other people.
It's such a multi-layered conversation too.
Yeah.
Like how you're talking about neurobiology, and then let's even break it down to like a sociological level. I mean, there's so many things going on. And, you know, I feel like people oh, how do I want to say this? People don't think of it in layers sometimes. I think they think of it as like point A to point B when really there's like a lot of other things in the middle of point A to point B.
Yeah. No, it's actually like point A to point Z plus 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 plus.
Totally.
I don't know. What are like the algebra symbols? Like, you don't hear, I don't know. Numbers.
Whoever decided that the alphabet and numbers needed to be combined just needs to be fired from like
boundaries.
Let
them know.
You got a good question down here from your fiance about can boundaries also be bad?
Ooh, that's a good one. Look at you, our little baby therapist coming up. We're teaching Carl.
You must live with a therapist or something.
He literally like has said therapist lines to me, and I'm like, ugh.
You're like, stop. You're like, there can only be one therapist in this house.
Literally, I'm like, who taught you that? And I'm like, oh, dang, that was me.
Giving away your secrets, girl.
Right. That's a good question. You know, I feel like, I feel like boundaries, I don't want to necessarily say bad. I feel like bad's a strong word. I feel like where boundaries can get tricky is if you're using boundaries to manipulate the other person. Does that make sense? Like if you're not using boundaries in a way that's like healthy for both parties. My supervisor, Laura, she always talks about, let me see if I have it somewhere. She talks about this idea of mutual respect, and we talk about it in positive discipline, and it's the idea of like, what are your needs? How do we get your needs met, my needs met, and the needs of the situation, right? And I feel like that's a good place to think about boundaries. Like, what are your needs? What are my needs? And what are the needs of this situation? And that way it includes and acknowledges like both parties in there in the context of which those parties are operating. And I think that quote unquote bad boundary setting can come into play when you're not fully acknowledging all of the needs of the situation and all of the needs of the parties involved in the situation. That's where I feel like it can kind of go a little haywire. It can also be not great if you're like coming at it from a place of like if you're how do I put it, if you're not communicating it in like a kind way, right? Like if you're trying to set a boundary but you're still not being very nice about it, or not being very like, not even nice, it's not really about nice, it's about kindness, right? Or respectfulness. Like I think that that can be kind of challenging with boundaries sometimes. I don't know, what are your thoughts, Ty?
So I have a question that I want to ask you about something you just said, and I didn't just write that whole thing down. No, I did not just write all of that down. But the only thing that I was going to add is there's different types of boundaries. So boundaries can look like, there's three main types that you'll hear about the most, which is passive, assertive, and then aggressive. Or no, passive or porous, rigid, and then I think, what's the middle one? That's like the assertive, like the good one, the one you want to aim for.
Yeah,
rigid is like, think of someone that's just like meh, 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 like don't touch me, like no, like just no, all the way, like super rigid. That's rigid boundaries. Porous is like walk all over me, like I will never say no, like just that's also bad. So bad, it just depends on what you mean by bad. Bad can look like different things. Bad can be too rigid. Bad can be by like not enough boundaries. But then what we as therapists advocate for is kind and firm boundaries. So like you got boundaries, but you're not being like a butthead about setting boundaries. Like they're good for you and they keep things healthy at the same time.
Yeah, I love that.
My question for you, sorry.
Oh, so you just bring up a really valid point about like that boundaries, it's not like it could be bad one way or the other, right? Like it can be too much on either side. It's about finding that just like happy medium, you know. So
yeah, because I feel like more people usually lean more towards one side, like, and that's more natural, I think. But you said what are your needs, what are my needs, and then what are the needs of the situation. So I understand what are your needs and what are my needs, but could you clarify what, like an example of what would be the needs of a situation? Would that fall under like safety, or like we have to be safe, like if it was a teenager drinking and driving or something like that? Is that the needs of a situation, or can you
the situation could be anything from like safety concerns all the way down to like really simple stuff. So like, for example, like sometimes like kids have to get off their phone for dinner. Okay, like that's a rule that a family might have. Like, hey, like we put our phones down for dinner time. So like your needs are like, hey, like as the parent, like, hey, you know, I would like for you to get off the phone, right? And then the teens' needs are like maybe they need to communicate with somebody for school or for a class project or just get their social needs met with their friends, right? The needs of the situation are, it's time for dinner. We have a family agreement that we decided that we're going to do no phones at dinner. So how do we find a way to get my needs met and your needs met? Maybe, hey, I'll give you 10 more minutes on the phone and then we're going to go ahead and eat. So it's like finding a way, the situation is like finding a way to like kind of collectively encompass what those needs are. And maybe the situation might call for different needs. Does that make sense?
Is that like compromising?
Kind of, yeah.
Okay. I could totally be wrong. I haven't actually had that mapped out for me like that, but my eyebrow goes up when I'm thinking of like 7 different teams that I'm working with right now. I'm like,
yeah, or even like the needs of the situation might be like, for example, drinking and driving. Like that's a good example, right? Like the needs of the situation is that like we need to keep you safe, right? Or like we need to make sure that, you know, they're aware that it's not okay to do that, right? Like they need to stop whatever that behavior is. So like I think being able to communicate like, hey, like these are the parameters that we have here, right? Laura always talks about, my supervisor, I love her so much, she always talks about like when kids go to the park, like when you have littles, right, and you're taking them to the park and they like don't want to leave, and so it's like, well, the needs of the situation are that like we have to go home because mommy has to start preparing dinner, so we can either stay for an extra 5 minutes or we can leave now. And you know, like I don't know, I don't have kids, so I'm like totally rattling this off like I have any idea what I'm talking about.
it's so good. I'm learning so much. Please keep rattling. Like I'm
are that like
this up.
Like this is what we have to work with, this is what we have to have met right now. The kid wants to play, the mom needs to cook dinner, where do we find the happy medium? Okay, you can have 10 more minutes and then we have to go, period. And that's that, you know, it's creating that parameter and acknowledging that we're operating. Yeah,
That's cool.
yeah.
Hello, Catherine.
Hello, how are you?
I think Courtney says, sorry.
Yeah. I said Courtney brought up something, a good point. When I think of bad, I think of aggressive versus assertive, right? And I think that brings up a really valid point about how do I put it? Like your perception, right? Like where your baseline is and what your perception is. So like somebody who might be passive might consider aggressive bad, right? Somebody who's aggressive might consider somebody that's passive bad, right? So we have to also consider like where do we fall on that spectrum of aggressive, passive, assertive, or where do we fall on the porous, rigid, somewhere in the middle spectrum? Like I think we all have like a natural tendency of where we fall, and I think it's really easy to kind of be like, ooh, I don't like the opposite of that, right? Because it's scary or it's different or it's not comfortable with me, right? So I think that's another piece to remember too about like our boundaries bad. Well, it depends on where your comfort level with boundaries even is, I think.
Totally. Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm looking over here at, so we kind of went through the educational background. You hit on that. We're already like 20 minutes in. I was like, this is going to be like 30 to 45 minutes. But I'm like, this is going to be like an hour and a half. So I'm like watching the clock now. I'm like, all right.
We can talk. That's the thing. We can talk.
Girl, I know. I think I put that in the post. I was like, we can talk now, but we're going to aim for like, we're going to aim for 30, 45 minutes. So I am curious about, so I want to ask you something about your areas of expertise, and then I want to go over the fun fact about you in the post. So you enjoy working with teens, young adults, and couples and families. So I'm curious, what about those populations do you enjoy?
Ooh, that's a good one. Okay, let's see. Teens. First off, teens are fun. Like they're just crack up sometimes. They're fun. They're real. You know what I like about teens is that they're real malleable, if that makes sense. Like you can see progress like really fluidly. Like it happens, you know what I mean? Because their brain is developing so quickly that like some of the changes that we're making, some of the things we're processing, some of the new habits we want to implement, right, or the skills we want to develop, like those kind of get ingrained a little easier, it seems, because and faster, it seems, because their brain is like developing alongside our work, which is really cool. Like I love thinking about like some of the teens that I've worked with for, you know, like a year now, and think about like where they were a year ago and where they are now, and like just watching like how they've grown. It's just like really cool. And just being able to like walk that journey with them. Yeah, I love teens. I also like, I'm probably like I know a lot of therapists that work with teens like really struggle with parent work. They like get really stressed about the parents, which is totes normal and understandable. But I actually really enjoy working with teens with parents, or parents of teens. There we go. I really enjoy working with parents.
I was over here like, I knew what she meant, but I was like,
no. Of teens, because I think they're like, they just need support, you know, like it's hard raising a teen, and especially nowadays, and like this world is so different than even from when I was a teenager, you know, like they just need support, and they need just a little extra love too. So it's really cool to be able to take some of the stuff that like we talk about in session and be able to help them with it. So kind of working from that systemic perspective. Adults, it's also a cool time. I think that I talk a lot about like in my kind of like outside of therapist life. I don't really bring it into the room, but it definitely has an effect. I talk about the quarter life crisis. Like I had a massive quarter life crisis, and I don't think that like quarter life crisis, that whole like 22 to 27, what the hell am I doing with my life? I graduated from college and now what? Or I graduated and went to the military and now I'm out and now what? Or I went straight into the workforce and now what? Like there's this huge, I think, like identity shift that occurs in that like 25 to 27 age range. And it's so rich of just cool work to do. Like solidifying somebody's identity, like who they are, what do they want, how do they advocate for that, how do they communicate in their workplace, how do they develop healthy relationships with their peers, with partners, like with reestablishing boundaries with parents. Like that age group just has so much stuff that I really like to work with in there. It's just like such a cool age range, and I just think that we don't really give enough like credit to like how difficult and like tumultuous that time can be, but also like how beautiful it can be and how cool it can be. So I really like working with that population too. Couples and families, it's just a different ball game. Like it's kind of like going from like, what's a good metaphor? It's like going from like t-ball baseball to like real baseball. And I'm only using watching the Houston Astros today. Go Astros! Woo! Okay, anyways, they won. But yes, like it's totally like going like just a different ball game. Like the rules are still the same, right? Like they still apply, but it's like on a different level. And I feel like it helps me use a different part of my brain, and it's so much more dynamic. And I love watching like conflict come up and like processing it in the moment. And like, I don't know, it's just really cool to like watch that occur, that process happen, and like use some of the stuff that we've talked about, like I've talked about with individual clients in like a family setting or in a couple setting. It's just, yeah, it's fun. I like it.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's super cool. Yeah, that's such a good point too, of like they're like totally different.
Yeah.
I don't want to say skill sets. It's similar skill sets, but they're just used so differently.
So differently.
Well, and naturally so, and rightfully so, because there's just way different stuff going on too.
Yeah, totally.
And then the last thing on here on your post was, we would love to know about the fact that you have an extensive makeup collection. And the fact that you have over 30 eyeshadow palettes, and I want to know how you use all of those before they expire, because I think I have 2 and I don't touch one of them. And so I'm over here like doing the math on 30. So tell us about that.
Oh, I do clean them out on a regular, like every 6 months or so. I'll like transition some out, make room for some new. So I try to keep it like somewhere between 27 to like 32. Once I get over 32, 33, I'm like, oh, okay, I gotta transition out. I do want more. Yeah.
Girls up in these comments calling you out.
I'm like, I got my eye on so many different things. I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't. Yeah, no, makeup for me is just like such a fun pastime. I just really enjoy it. Some people like painting, right? Or like drawing. And it's like honestly the same type of thing, but it's like on your face. And I love, it just puts me in like a really mindful, like almost meditative place to just like play with color and like blend and try new things. And yeah, it's super fun. I definitely don't know that I use them all before they like expire, but generally with powder products, like you're kind of okay as long as you keep them clean. So I will spritz them with like a really high content alcohol, like I think it's like 86 or 90% alcohol, and that the alcohol evaporates, but it helps keep them sanitized and doesn't turn them bad, which is good. So yeah, but I have a lot. I
didn't realize you were supposed to be sanitizing them.
You what?
I didn't realize they were supposed to be sanitizing them.
That's okay. Now you know. It's okay. It's if it makes you feel any better, you're supposed to wash your brushes like every week, and I'm really bad about like washing brushes. I'm like really. But it's gonna have some.
So
if I wash brushes, it takes me like 45 minutes because I have like so many brushes, so I have to like be very like I have to take the time to wash my brushes. Like.
Hey, Janine is here. Hi, Janine. She's the gal behind Psyche.
Oh, cool. Hey, how's it
going? This is Sarah. She's one of the gals. I sent you her name.
Yeah.
For one of the people that would be good to interview.
Because I got the email from them when I was on vacation. So.
Oh, okay.
On for a few days, and I was like, oh my gosh, no, like I want to do it. So yeah, y'all reach out.
Cool. So, okay, I got through your the post, and so maybe we can get through a couple of questions.
Let's do a couple of questions.
Yeah. Can we go to 8, you think? It's 7:45 now. I think that would be a good
We had tech problems for the first like 15 minutes, so I feel like that's 45.
Yeah.
I feel like that's
And if we go over a couple minutes, that's okay. Okay, so I'm looking through some of these questions. So, Sarah, did you know that you always wanted to be a therapist?
I love this question.
Okay, story time. What's that about?
Of my this story that I'm about to tell, I put it in my grad school essay, and it was like the epitome of like a Hail Mary. Like, I don't know if this is gonna land or not, but we'll see. So like, I remember being young, like, I don't know, somewhere in the neighborhood of like 8, 9, 10, 11. And that's right when like Dr. Phil was coming out. Okay, like Dr. Phil was like a new show that like would come out, daytime TV, right? And I was so into Dr. Phil. Like, I loved watching Dr. Phil. I would literally get off the bus at school and like damn near jog to like get home and be a little backpack, and I'm like running down the street and I like let myself in, and I would grab myself a little Yoplait yogurt, sponsor us, just kidding, a little Yoplait yogurt, and I would sit there and like pop it open, and I'd be home just in time for Dr. Phil to start. And I remember watching Dr. Phil thinking, he gets to help people like live a better life. Like, how cool is that? Like, he gets to talk to people for a living and like help them, and like how awesome. Little did I know that like he probably wasn't helping them, and he's actually like kind of a trash therapists, but
sponsor us, Dr. Phil. Sponsor us.
no, don't sponsor.
You're like, don't.
Dr. Phil, do not come watch this.
Don't come at us. Don't come at us.
We don't want you, Dr. Phil. Like, no. But like, Dr. Phil was like literally the first time that I thought about like what, like that was my first kind of like, what is therapy, or like what does that even mean, or what does that look like, right? And like that stuck with me for a long time. I didn't always want to necessarily, like, when I remember when I went to college and like throughout college, I didn't necessarily like want to be a therapist. I thought I would have to have a psych degree. I really wasn't into getting a psychology degree. I really wanted to like study comm, and I was into sociology. I was a dance minor for a little bit. Like I was kind of all over the place with what I wanted to do, but I knew that once I kind of like got out of college and got into like this weird limbo land of like, my quarter life crisis of like, I don't really know what I want to do, and like, what's next for me, you know, like my whole life has been planned until this point, and now like, what is it? I kind of had this moment of like, I think I want to be a therapist, you know, like, I think this is like, I think I want to pursue that, you know? And, I had my grandmother, I was really close to my Turkish grandma. I love her to pieces, Grandma Seven. She passed away in like 2015, and her kind of like last conversation that she had with me was like, go get an education, go get a master's degree. Like, this is what we want for you. And that was really like when she passed, what pushed me to go like, okay, I'm going to go do this. And I like went and took the GRE, and like, that's what kind of set like me actually going back and following my dream into motion was that loss. It was just like so important for me to like, life is short and time is short, and you know, you got to do what you love and like what you're passionate about. So off I went.
Wow.
Yeah.
I did not know that, to be with you.
Yeah.
That's super cool.
Like really intense grandma like moment, you know? But I literally put that Dr. Phil story in my grad school essay, and I was like, if somebody doesn't love this, I don't know what to tell them.
If they don't accept this, it's their loss.
They must not be fans of daytime television, I guess. I don't know, but I was like, somebody's either gonna read this and be like, wow, that's really sweet, or like, oh Lord, help. Like, get her out.
Be like, not another Dr. Phil essay. Oh my God.
Whoever read that had apparently an affinity for daytime television just as much as I did. So love
it. Let's see. And then some of the, well, okay. I want to get to some of the ones that you were asked on your personal. I'll save those towards the end because you got some good ones. If you weren't a therapist, what would you be?
Ooh. Okay, so that's
super interested to hear this one.
Okay, so I did for a while. I was like, I've done makeup a little bit freelance here and there. I did real estate for a while. I was doing like real estate apartment locating stuff. I definitely would not be an accountant. That's my friend Dee. Dee, I wonder, I don't know if you were watching when we were talking about why they've decided to make letters into numbers with math, like in algebra. And we were like, why is that a thing? Backup dancer for Beyonce, that would be a dream job.
Yes, girl.
You know, I think that I would be, I've always said that like one of my, I guess like, if I could be anything, I would love to be a mascot, like a sports mascot. Like, okay, so like I'm a huge, like I said, I'm a huge Houston Astros fan. I'm a huge like Houston sports fan in general, but like huge Houston Astros fan. Orbit is the mascot. He's like this little green fuzzy alien guy. And I just think that would be so much fun. Like you just put on your and you like go to get like watch sports games, and you can like hug people and make them happy, and like, you know, take pictures with kids and stuff. I don't know. It just like would be like such a happy, like you just get to make joy for people. Like how fun is that? And like wear a cute little green suit doing it, and nobody knows it's you, right? So there's no like they just know you as Orbit. They don't know who's in the suit, right? So there's no pressure to like be somebody. You just get to be Orbit. Like, how cool is that? Like, Astro sponsor me. I want to be, can I be Orbit for a day?
We're up on this Instagram live trying to get sponsored. I should have prefaced that in the beginning of this video. Dude, I would have never, like, I could see, like, makeup artist or, like, honestly, something really creative or, like, dancing. Like, you're a Leo at heart. And so I'm thinking something that's, like, just...
It's performative, right? Like, being a mascot. Like,
yeah.
Perform at, like, half times or, like, in between the innings. You know, like, there's a performance aspect to that for sure. And
I would never guess that. But that's cool.
The sweat, though.
Yeah.
It would get, like, I mean, okay, so I did use dance for a long time. Like, I danced from the time I was 13 till I was about 20. Like, I graduated from high school. I danced all through high school. I minored in dance for a little bit in college. Like, and when I was in high school and I was dancing at our studio, we had this dance that we would do around Christmas time called, like, I Want to Be a Christmas Present. And it's this really precious little Barney song. Like, I think it's from a Barney, like, show, because I remember hearing Barney's voice in it. And we would all dress up like different Christmas presents and, like, you know, be like dancing. It was really cute. Anyway, I was the dog. I was like the puppy. And so I had this full fur puppy suit that I would wear, which was lovely if we were performing outside in the winter and it was cold. But if we were inside, and there were times that we were inside, one time we performed at a nursing home, and, you know, they keep it a little warm in there because, like, you know, old people, they get cold, God bless them, you know, they get chilly. So I thought I was going to die in the middle of this nursing home.
That times 100.
It's so bad. I was like,
don't want to be
and I'm like sweating, and it was like, oh, it was rough. So yes, you're right, Courtney. It would definitely be a hot job for sure.
God bless me. Okay, let me think, or let me look. I'm gonna ask you one more question, and then I would love to kind of wrap up with some of the ones that you got. So
Good.
let's do what are some common, wait a minute. What are some common stigmas or misconceptions about therapy that you encounter as a therapist?
Yeah, ooh, that's a good one. I like that.
You heard that question, so it's your question.
I remember when you sent me that question, I was like, oh, I like that, because I think that you know, a lot of people, especially,
God bless her, it needs to be reworded.
I was like, try this, but let me, like, tweak it a little bit. That calm studies moment coming into play. Yeah, you know, I think that you know, as a therapist who's been in therapy for a long time too, right? Like, so I've sat on both sides of the chair, like both sides of the room. I know what it's like to sit in the chair. I know what it's like to sit on the couch. And I think that if you've never been in that place, like, you don't know what to expect. And a lot of the, like, stuff that we've seen on movies and TV shows, it's like this very stiff, like, they have their little clipboard, and obviously there's probably wouldn't be leopard print, right? That would be like a regular plain brown clipboard and be like, well, tell me how you feel today, and I'm going to have you take all this stuff. Like, it doesn't have to be like that, you know? Like, I think that if you find a therapist that, like, is there's therapists out there for everybody. There's therapists out there that are, like, real structured and, you know, super traditional in a lot of ways. There's therapists out there that are relaxed and easygoing, and that just want to get to know you and just want to walk through your life with you. Like, there's therapists like that out there, and I'd like to think I'm one of those therapists. Like, I'm very relaxed. I'm very easygoing. I want my clients to come in and feel like they can laugh with me. I want them to come in and feel like they can, like, tell me the good stuff and have fun. Like, I quoted a Drake song in like a session a couple weeks ago. And my client was like, I love that my therapist quotes Drake. And I was like, the thing, you know, like, there's therapists of all kinds out there. And I think that a lot of people get really stuck on, like, are they going to go in there and diagnose me? Are they going to go in there and be judging me and assessing me? And yes, there are, I'm sure, some therapists like that. And some people need that, right? Like, there's people out there that do need a more, like, a very clinical approach, and an approach that's very structured and very intense in that way. But like, there's also therapists out there that are not like that. And it doesn't have to be scary. It doesn't have to be super rigid, super structured, super formal. It can just be like two people like walking through life together and discussing it. And it doesn't have to be that intense. It's intense, but it doesn't have to be that scary up front.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that that's kind of like the biggest misconception that I've run into for sure, is just that like how formal it has to be, or how intense it has to be, or how you know like diagnostic driven. I think, I don't know if I'm trying to find the right word, but it doesn't always have to be like that. And yeah, I think those
are right. I mean, I've had clients be like, I didn't realize that you could wear jeans. I was like, what do you mean? Be like, and they were like, well, figured you'd be in like a blazer, or like, I'd be like, I'm not Freud. I don't have a couch for you. I mean, I do have a couch for you to lay on, but like, we're not doing that here. Like, I'm not, like,
want to lay down. You don't have to lay down.
Right. Yeah. And so I don't know. I mean, you're totally right. I think people, they don't go to therapy because they don't go to therapy. How am I going to say this? They don't know what therapy is, but what they think therapy is why they don't go to therapy.
Yeah.
Like, they don't have the correct, what's up, Sara?
Hi, girl. Hi, girl.
So it's like, they don't know exactly what therapy is, but what they do, like the image they do have of therapy is why they don't go. Yeah. But that's, they don't have like the correct information.
Yeah, for sure.
That.
This, right? Like, that's why I think fit is so important, because it's like the right therapist, you'll know, and it'll feel good, and it'll feel safe, and it'll feel authentic, and it won't feel forced. Like, it'll feel like safety. It'll feel like home. Like, that's how I feel when I go see my therapist. I feel like I get to be home, like, it's really cool. And I hope that I can be that person for other people, like helping them feel safe and helping them feel just like loved, loved by me, loved by themselves, like all that good stuff, all the warm and fuzzies,
Mm-hmm.
I want to provide a space for that.
You got a good question in the comments. Did you see that?
Let me see. Do you think society is pushing therapy on people, like adding pressure? Ooh, that's a good question. I definitely think that it's definitely become more accessible and more talked about. So I can see why it would come across more forward, I guess, or more like, more encouraged. I don't know if it's forced necessarily on people, but I do think that because it's become more accessible and because it's become more talked about, that it's kind of become like, well, everybody should be in therapy. Everybody should go to therapy, right? Like, and I think that definitely has like opened the door for like some good things and some bad things, right? Like, I think it's great that it's more accessible and more common, and like more people are wanting to seek it out. I also think that sometimes people aren't always ready to do therapy. Like, they aren't always ready to dive into that and what that entails. And because like there's a lot of great things about therapy, but it's also like a lot of really heavy stuff, and it could be very disruptive in your life, because if you're doing the work, you're changing patterns, right? You're changing disruptive patterns in your life, or disruptive behaviors that you have, or changing dynamics of relationships, and other people might not be equipped to deal with that, right? Like, the people you're in relationship with might not enjoy that very much. They might not want you to stand up for yourself after you haven't been, or they might not want you to be more passive after you've been taking the lead on things, right? Like, so it can be really disruptive, and I think that sometimes people aren't necessarily ready for that type of shift in their life, or that type of shift within themselves, and that's fine. Like, that's totally okay. Like, there's nothing wrong with being like, no, I don't know if I'm ready for this, or, oh, like, I thought I'd be good with this and now I'm not. Like, that's totally okay. But I think that, it's just about acknowledging where you're at in that, and like having some acceptance with where you're at. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I think you explained that really well, to be honest. I have not, to be 100% honest, I haven't personally come across a situation where someone was like, you need to go to therapy, or you're like a bad person for not being in therapy type of thing. And though I haven't come across that personally, I'm more than sure that some person has said that. Like, just because I haven't come across that does not mean that that is out there and happening type of thing. But in the case of something like that, what I would have to say is, well, like, good for you, but that, like you said, not everyone's ready. Like, some people, the lid on boxes stays shut for a reason type of thing. But you know, I think, Sarah, you said that really well with, like, more people are starting to talk about therapy, and it's becoming, and mental health too. Like, I think the conversation is becoming more open about talking about how you're actually doing, and you know, and like that. But I mean, I certainly hope people aren't like pushing people to go to therapy type of thing. That's a very personal choice, and one that someone has to, you know, decide and be ready for, like you were saying, just because therapy's work. Like, you know, it's
hard.
You put in work.
Yeah, you do. It's hard. It's hard.
Let's see.
Look at Carl stirring the pot. Should there be more accessible by being covered by more insurances?
I have mixed feelings on this, to be 100% honest. I need to stop saying 100%, but that just means I'm feeling really passionate about whatever I'm about to say. Preface with 100%. You want to go first?
Oh, we don't got enough time for this one.
Maybe consolidate our answers?
Yeah, so I feel like, yes, okay, here's the thing. Yes, I wish that it was, hold on, let me reread the question now. Should therapy be more accessible by being covered by more insurances? Yes. Yes, and I think that insurance companies need to make it easier for therapists to be paid a living wage, for therapists to be paneled, for therapists to not have to put diagnoses on their clients in order to get reimbursement. I think that the whole system is broken in a lot of ways, because insurance companies don't necessarily incentivize it for us. Like, they don't make it real easy for us on our behalf. And they don't even really necessarily make it easier or better on the clients, other than the accessibility and the financial piece of it, right? But I think personally, sometimes it ends up doing more damage, because their insurance companies require diagnoses in order. Carl, America is broken. That's a different live for a different day. No, but they oftentimes require diagnoses, or they do require diagnoses in order for reimbursement, either of the therapist or of the client for out of network, right? Well, sometimes people don't fit a diagnosis, and so we're sitting, or they have symptoms, but it's like trauma based. It's not necessarily because they have some sort of disorder, it's because they've been through trauma. So they'll require us to put a diagnostic on them, and then say, oh, well, we're only going to cover 10 sessions. So you're going to have us put some sort of like big label on these people, and then only give us like 10 sessions to process that, or even determine if that's accurate. Like, that's not right to me. Like, that doesn't feel right to me as a therapist to put that on somebody and have my practice and my relationships with my clients dictated by somebody else that is sitting at some desk in some, I don't even know where the insurance company headquarters are, because I don't care, and making decisions for me and my clients. Like, I'm not about that. So yeah, like, I would love to be able to accept insurance at some point. I'm super passionate about, like, people need access to affordable mental health care. People need accessible mental health care. It's time. It's been time, especially after last year, 2020, 2021. Like, it's been time. We need that. And also, I totally see it from the therapist perspective. When we're not getting paid adequately for those hours, we're not going to be reimbursed at the rates that we should be. It takes a lot of time and paperwork. We're getting constraints on the way that we can practice with our clients. Like, I see it from both sides. It's really hard, because how do you advocate for increased insurance coverage when it's so broken in and of itself, and it's so not beneficial to our therapists, and really it's not super beneficial to our clients either, because they're not getting the best care that they could be getting, right? So the whole thing is just like really, it's so hard. Sorry, I just like totally God, that's like something I'm super passionate about is like the insurance thing, and like, you know, the balance between like providing good care for our clients and also be like living a, like being comfortable and being paid adequately for our work and our time and the training that we received and the degrees that we have and the certifications and the licensure that we have to upkeep. Like, it's a balancing act, you know? So I don't know if that answered your question. But yeah, I mean, I do think that there needs to be a shift because people are needing care. People need help, and like, we can help them, right? But like, at what cost and at what expense, you know? So basically, let's overhaul the system, and is what I'm saying. With me.
First, because I cannot follow that up. Like, oh
Sorry.
my God. No! Oh my God, don't you dare apologize.
No, I
no.
like went on
No.
my, but
That was like the most eloquently and passionately explained answer I've ever seen and or heard and seen and heard. But because we both got into that fiasco with the insurance company. I mean, it's so interesting because being on the therapist side of it, I have gotten a different perspective of insurance companies. And this is from someone who did go through insurance companies. I mean, like, that's we get we have insurance to use insurance, right? Like, as a person. And so naturally we're going to want to be like, well, yeah, I would like to use insurance. And it's, as therapists, we're not like, we want to like charge you the highest fee that we possibly can. Like, that's not why you get in this field. We want to help you. We want to give you good care, while also like, we have to take care of ourselves too at the same time. And insurance, it's a very small piece of a broken system.
Yeah.
Like you said.
It's really, really incredibly sad. You know what's really sad to me about it too is the fact that, fun fact, in case you didn't know, so Taylor and I are both provisionally licensed, right? So we're LPC Associates, Licensed Professional Counselor Associates. What that means we're in our first 3,000 hours of practice, right? We're kind of like in our residency if we were doctors. Like, we have to go through a really big kind of training process in order to become fully licensed. Fun fact, in the state of Texas, LPC associates cannot be paneled with insurance. So a lot of us who are starting out and new and would be willing to accept maybe lower pay, right? Because we're starting out, we're new, we want clients and we're entry level and we want to gain that experience. A lot of us that would potentially panel with insurance companies, we don't even have the option. Like, I don't even have the option to offer people insurance. So like, even if I wanted to like go through all that, like even if I was like mentally prepared to do all the paperwork, which like that's a whole nother ball of wax too, is like everything that we have to do to like get paid by the insurance company. It's a lot. Like, even if I was up for that, I don't even have the option. And that's like really sad that like we don't like this whole group of people like who's coming into the field who would want to be able to offer this to people can't, you know? Like, it's just it's sad. And I'm like, for what reason? For what reason? There's like not, I don't, the only reason I can think of is that the insurance companies get concerned about the liability piece of like having a newer therapist, or get concerned about like us not making adequate diagnoses. But we've all passed the same licensure test. We've all had the same amount of classes, right? That everybody else, every other therapist has taken. And we have a supervisor. So like that whole liability piece, like, miss me with the BS, like that's not real. We have somebody that's overseeing us. We have somebody that will accept that liability if we do in fact make a misstep. Like, it doesn't make sense to me why they are so adamant about gatekeeping us from that whole process. You know, like, I can't even consider if I want to take insurance until whenever I get licensed. That sucks. That sucks for me, and that sucks for other people that I could really potentially help. and that could really benefit from coming to therapy with me or any other LPC associate that might want to take insurance, you know?
Girl, you need to do some advocacy work for stuff around this.
Yeah.
You would be really good. I hope you can find something, because you got some really good points, and you've pointed it out very well, like very eloquently and factual, and just wanted to say that. And chat is giving you so many. I don't know if you've noticed that while you were in such the zone when you were going. I was just soaking it in, but chat was too. You were getting tons of heart. I love it, girl.
It's
yeah, and the only thing I want to say about that too is we do try to work with people, as far as most therapists do sliding scale, and so we try to slide and match like a copay situation, or we try to slide down if someone can't afford our full rate. We will try to slide and find something that they're comfortable with, while, you know, like we do need to get paid a fair amount, but we also, like I said earlier, we're not wanting to charge you an arm and a leg for an hour. Like, a client is much more than an hour to us, and we do a lot of work on the back end, but we're also not wanting to like rob you of your bank account either. Like, so much to that, which I'll make a mental note that is something we could probably talk about in the future.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to say about that before we can touch on the last couple of questions that you got?
I think that you bring up a really valid point too, about like, we don't want to, like, we're not out to get people. Like, I don't doubt there's some therapists out there, I can like think of a few off top, but like, I'm not going to be shady, that like are out there just to like get their coins, right? But like, if you ask me privately, I'll probably tell you. But anyway, like but like, you're right. Like, we're not, most of the therapists that I know out there, like, we're not out there, we're out there to make a living, but we're not out there to like scam people or try to like get people, like, be weird with it. Like, we want to be able to help people, and whatever that we can do to like, Courtney probably knows who I'm talking about. Courtney and Megan for sure, because I know we've talked about this person. They already know who I'm talking about, but like, we're not out there to get people. And so I really, that's another piece I think that adds to like the stigmatization or the misconception piece, right? Is like this idea of like people like that, you're like, you can't approach your therapist about that type of thing, that you can't, like, if they have a fee, that's their fee, and it's rigid. It doesn't have to be rigid, right? It can be a little more porous. It can be a conversation. Like, never be afraid to ask. If you have a therapist that you're like, damn, I really want to work with her, like, wow, like, they would be such a good fit for me. It never hurts to ask and reach out, you know, like, and just say like, hey, are you offering sliding scale? Hey, like, I want to come, but I can only do bi-weeklies, or instead of weekly appointments. Like, most therapists, like, I'm always willing to work with people, because like, yeah, it's expensive. It's an investment. It's, you know, a whole car payment basically a month worth of, like, it's not cheap. I want to be able to help people, you know, and like be able to accommodate people who need that. So anyway, I just want to encourage people to like have that conversation, and don't be afraid to like advocate for what you're needing, and try to see if you can find a therapist that can meet you in the middle for that. Because we're out there.
We're out there. Just find us. It was so well said.
That's 8 and 2:15.
Girl, let's go through these. I'm telling you, hey, no, we gave them fair warning in that post. I said we can talk, and people who are here are choosing to be here. So that's all I'm gonna say.
Love it.
So the ones that you got are, do you think therapy is for everyone?
Ooh. You know, it's funny. So I got that question from a friend of mine, and it's really funny because I actually got that question from a client like a few days prior. And I was like, ooh, I hadn't thought about that one before. You know, I think, yeah, it is. I wasn't going to out you, but yeah. That's my friend T.
I had a feeling based off of what the other question was up top. Anyway, sorry, keep going.
Yeah, it was the same. Yeah. So, you know, I think the way that I answered that question to that client was, do I think therapy, I really do believe that there is a therapist out there for everyone. I think that anybody who's out there who wants to seek out therapy, there is a therapist out there for you somewhere in the universe. And I really strongly believe, like, I've seen this in my own practice, like the universe brings me the clients that, like, they bring me the right people, like at the right times. And I really fully believe that, like, the right therapist will come into your life at the right time, and that there is somebody out there for everybody, and like trust that the universe will guide you to that right person. Maybe not the first time, right? It might not be your first try, it might not be your first time, but eventually, like, if you keep putting that out there, like, the universe will bring you the right person. So I think that therapy is out there for everybody. The right person is out there for everybody. Do I think therapy, and I do think that therapy is for everybody, you know, like, I think that anybody could, if they're in the place where they want to start that journey, and in the place where they want to have that exploration of themselves and do that work, like, I think it's there. Do I think everyone is ready for that work? No. You know what I mean? Like, I think that would be irresponsible to assume that therapy is for everyone because everyone is ready for that work. I don't necessarily think that's the case. I think that it requires a lot of just knowing that you're going to put a lot of time, a lot of money. You're going to have a lot of kind of weird upheaval. You're going to have moments that maybe don't feel great. Like, there's going to be a lot of heavy stuff that comes up, and you know, we have to make sure that people are ready and equipped for that. And that's part of our job, is making sure that we communicate that to them effectively, and being able to, like, let them know that they're supported in those moments. But, you know, I think that therapy could potentially be for everyone. It just depends on if everyone is ready for it, and if everyone is in the place where they can do that work.
I really need to start going ahead of you on these questions because I'm getting a little bit bothered by your answers just because they're so good. I feel like there's nothing I could say to like follow up on that. Yeah, I mean, you said it so well. I mean, the way that I've kind of described it in the past is, you know, we are all human, and there are moments where, you know, we mess up and we have to reflect on that, but we are always growing, and there are always things that we can be working on. And
Yeah.
so my question that I always ask people is, well, do you want to grow? Like, is there something that you want to be better at, or something that you are good at and that you want to be great at, or something like that? Like, therapy doesn't always have to be processing trauma, and there's a space for that, but there's a space for anything.
Yeah.
Therapy can be about goals, and can be about you can already be good. You can already be great, but you can be better, or like the best version, and just working towards like the fullest, best version of you. Like, that's what therapy is. So that's what I ask everyone, is if you're wanting to grow.
I think that's such a beautiful piece that kind of ties into that, like, misconception piece earlier too, right? That, like, there's this idea that it always has to be about past, right? Like, what happened to me in the past? What happened in my childhood? What happened to this? What happened to that? I think that therapy can also be future oriented or present oriented. You know, like, it can be just what's happening right there in the moment. It can be where you want to be at some point. Like, it doesn't always have to be about like processing that heavy stuff. And I think that that's like a really important it's like a really important piece to consider.
We can be life coaches in a lot of ways too, like life coaches and goal oriented. If that's what the client is needing, like, we can fit whatever the client is wanting to focus on.
Yeah, I love that.
And then, so I think we got that one. And then the other one that you got after that is, do you think people can be fully healed through therapy?
Sorry, I got a little tickle. Hold on.
Can I go first?
Yeah, go for it.
I'm going first this time. Okay.
Yeah, go.
Okay. My first response is no, because I think that kind of a healing journey is a journey. I think it's filled with mountains and peaks and valleys, and it's more of a journey than it is a destination. Like, I don't think healing is a point of destination. I think it's something that you're always traveling. So I think a therapist can help you travel that path. So you don't have to travel it alone. Like Sarah, you said, walking through life together type of thing. And I think that healing process is the same. You're going to have someone who's not a friend, not a family member, but someone who's really going to see you and have like a very unbiased perspective of you. And they're going to give you a very healing perspective as well. But fully healed, there's so much that goes into that. Does the person want to be fully healed? Are they ready to let go of some things that are not serving them anymore? Because there's some really deep-rooted things that some people, naturally and understandably so, have trouble letting go of.
Yeah.
And that takes a while to what word am I looking for? Like, dismantle those, especially when it's like beliefs about ourselves that we've been holding on to since like childhood. So
Yeah. I think that I love that answer, Taylor. I love that you brought up that it's like a journey, right? Like it's always ever evolving, you know? It's always ever evolving. I also think too, the idea of like fully healed implies that I don't know that we can ever be fully done with the work, right? Like that's what the beautiful thing about like long-term relational therapy is, I think, is that like it's always something, you know, it's always something new, it's always something different. Even if you've processed and looked over your childhood stuff, there's new things happening in your life, right? Like as you're living your life, there's new grist for the mills, so to speak, right? Like there's always something that we can grow from and change and think about or work towards. Like there's always something. And I think that you know, I think that like I think about my own therapist, right? Like so I've talked about my therapist before with some of my colleagues and stuff, but my therapist, I started seeing my therapist in 2010. And I'm actually, it's weird, I'm the age now that she was when she started, like, or like 2 years ago, it was like I was the age that she was when she started seeing me. And so we've literally walked through the last like 10, 11 years of life together. And I still see her. I still see her every other week, you know, depending on the season of life. Sometimes I see her weekly, sometimes I see her bi-weekly, but I still see my therapist every other week. And you know, there's sometimes that we have more to talk about than others, right? Like sometimes there's some like stuff going on that I really got to work through. Sometimes it's just like, hey, what's like, let's touch base. What's going on with life? Like, how are you feeling about this? How are you feeling about that? Like, but it's never, I've never had a moment where I've been like, okay, I'm done. Even on the times, even when I've met like things that I've wanted to accomplish, right? Like even when I've had moments of like, oh, like for example, like I used to be really that's why part of the reason I really like conflict management is because conflict management was a big thing for me in my therapeutic journey. Like I've always had to work towards like managing my anger appropriately sometimes, and I've done a really great job of that now. But I've, you know, even when I was kind of at a better place with that, I was like, okay, cool. Like that was great. I can move forward and talk about something else. You know, I think that it's always like something that's ever evolving. You know, it doesn't always, I've never had a moment where I'm like, no, I don't need to see them anymore. You know, but that's, I think not everybody's like that. I think that that does speak to like the value of my therapist in my life and value of therapy in my life overall. But I don't necessarily think that like, if I couldn't see her, like if something happened and she decided she didn't want to be a therapist anymore, or like she left the industry, like I'd be fine. I'd be okay for a little bit. I'd probably go find another therapist at some point. But I think that I don't have to necessarily like I think that the longevity of our relationship speaks to like the importance of therapy in my life, if that makes sense. And not so much like there's a, like Dee says, like it's always a journey or there's never an end. Do you think that that develops codependency between the individual and the client? Like, I don't necessarily look at my relationship with my therapist as codependency. I look at it as like, it's somebody that I value in my life, and I value their opinion, and I value their like input, and I value having a safe space for myself, and like doesn't have to have an end. It can just be, you know? I think that if we put an end, if we always have an end game in mind, then there's always, I think, a feeling of like deficit that we create within ourselves inadvertently. Like, I'm not there yet. I'm not good enough yet. I'm not done yet. Right. But that puts a lot of judgment on where we're at now in the present moment. And that can also be harmful too.
That's a good, I like how you explain that. And that reminds me too of, there's different types of therapy. So Sarah and I practice, like we are believers of more of like a long-term therapy where we invest in our clients and we create relationships with them. So that's more of a long-term model. Now there are some therapists that are very short-term based, like especially at colleges, they can only afford to spend like one semester with a college student because they just got to have them in and out. There's too many college students. So those are very solution focused. So if you get a therapist who's solution focused, they're going to help you come in. Like if you come in, they're going to help you focus on a problem and find a solution to that. Now, pros and cons to every type of therapy, right? So there's pros and cons to the way that therapy and Sarah and I, there are pros and cons to every style of therapy. And so with the solution focused, the pro is that it's quick, it's a solution, and it happens fast. The con is that if there's deeper rooted stuff there and that's not getting addressed, it's going to happen again. And that's going to happen again after that. And so you're constantly going in this loop, right? So the other thing is, you know, I know you said, let me scroll back up. You had mentioned therein lies the business plan of the therapy industry. If it's never an end, then there's always a need for it. I want to respectfully disagree with that perspective. You were not the first person who has told me that. I do want to say, and I understand that perspective. Being on the other side and being a therapist, I don't have that perspective anymore. The reason I don't is I think of it, I'm going to give you an example. I hope it makes sense. If it doesn't make sense, please let me know. I think of it kind of like grief, or like when you lose someone that was just like your person. You are always going to miss them. So I'm thinking of the concept of fully healed, right? So if you lose someone that's like a part of your heart or a part of your soul, that's like, what if I were to ask you, have you fully processed your grief? That would be like, do you fully like not miss them anymore? And most people are going to be like, well, no. Like there are moments where I miss them, and sometimes it's harder than others. But, you know, and I'm always going to miss them, right? Like that's a constant, but it changes over time and it evolves over time and it doesn't look the same. So, yeah. So, you know, when there's not an end, you know, there's not an end because it changes. Sarah,
Yeah, I see what you mean. It's like, because we're constantly like, as you move through your life, you're constantly evolving and changing and doing and growing, and things are right. Like your life might not be like it did a year ago or 5 years ago or 10 years ago, right? And so like I think that when you have this kind of, as your life evolves and grows and changes, like so do your therapeutic needs, you know, and so do like your relationship with what you're experiencing and yourself and your personality and who you are, like all that stuff evolves as you move in and out of different roles in your life, different phases in your life, different relationships in your life, like that all ebbs and flows. And so I think that the idea that there's a fully healed or that there's an end game, I think part of the reason why there's I guess like disagreement with that is because there's not always, there's always going to be something, you know. And the idea that I think what strikes me is about the idea of fully healed is that it implies that we were broken in the first place. I don't believe that we're broken. I don't believe that people can be wounded and never healed. I think that people experience things. I think people have experiences in their life that are traumatic or that are painful or that are sad or that are joyful and happy, right? Like there's also that side too that we like sometimes forget to talk about. But as the Leo, I like have to bring up that I'm like, it's not all bad, right? But we have these things that we can move through in our life and that they change us and they add nuance to us and they add different facets to us, right? Like they add different layers to us. And so as we're constantly, it's like a gobstopper, like as we're constantly moving through our life, we're adding new layers and we're adding new layers. And so it's going to take more to get to the middle, you know? And if you're always adding layers because you're moving through your life and you're living your life and you're experiencing things, you're going to have always something new to chew on, unless you're not really doing much. But even then I would chew on that because I'd be like, well, why aren't you doing anything? Like, you know what I mean? Like, I think that I don't know that we can ever be like fully healed. I think that we just kind of move through our life and reflect on our experiences. And as we go and as we reflect, like new stuff happens and that gives us new perspectives on old layers or old things. Like, I think that, you know, it's a constant evolving as we evolve, you know.
That's exactly what I was gonna say too, is just we grow, like we're constantly growing. We continue as we age, we have all these different life experiences and then that changes us, you know, and they're not always good. They're good. You just made that comment about they're not always bad. So they're not always bad, but and you know, we are just constantly evolving and we're changing. And yeah, you said that really.
I gotta pause here because I love what Jamie just said. There's a lot of choice in the relationship. Most clients stay because they want to and enjoy the relationship, not because they're forced to. And I think a really valid point about the longevity of therapeutic relationships. And you know, I mean, like I've had people tell me before when I talk about like how I've seen my therapist for over 10 years and they're like, don't you want to find a new therapist, or don't you think it's time to move on? Or like people sometimes have weird responses about the length of time in which I've seen her and whether or not I'm like too comfy, right? Or whether or not I'm getting what I need out of it, right? But like I choose that. Like I choose that with her for a reason. You know what I mean? Like I could stop seeing her at any point if I wanted to. Like any of my clients could stop seeing me at any point. I've had clients that have stopped seeing me. I've had clients that I've worked with for 8 or 10 sessions and then they've been like, you know, like I think I'm good. And I'm like, okay, cool. Like I respect that, right? Or I've had clients that are like, you know, I'm going to try like a form of couples counseling with my husband, so I'm going to pause my individual therapy. Cool. That's great. Like come on back if you want. If not, I wish you well. Like that's but it's always I try to make it the client's choice. I'm not going to say there's never been a time that I've like terminated with a client because I don't think they need it anymore, but very rarely has there been a time where I've been like, okay, I think you're done, because I don't really feel like that's my choice to make. I can say like, wow, you've come a long way. Do you feel like therapy is still serving you? Do you feel like this is something that's still helpful for you or beneficial? Are you still getting something out of this? That's one thing, right? But if they're choosing to come for however long they want to come, like there's a lot of agency in that decision. And so if somebody feels like, yeah, I'm fully healed, I've got what I needed out of this, cool, okay, let's talk about it. Let's process it. I'm going to miss you. Like, let's do an activity to commemorate our time together and send you off. But like, I never forget my clients. I never, ever, ever, I mean, never. I never forget my clients. Because they take a piece of me, and then they leave a piece of them with me, you know, like they're a part of me. And I don't take that lightly, you know, because that's the type of work that I do. I do work that I get really invested in people. I love my people. I will not hesitate to say that I love my clients. I do, you know, like there's some that challenge me more than others. Right. But I genuinely, like, I love my clients, and that's how I work. That's how I do therapy. I don't know any other way to be. I'm heart led. Like, that's just who I am. And some people may agree or disagree with that, but that's okay. It takes different strokes for different folks. But I don't think that, yeah, I think that implying that there's a like, that there has to be an end implies that there's no choice in that, and to a certain degree. And they all have a choice, you know.
I've had a, sorry?
Not up to us to determine when somebody's fully healed.
Totally. I've also had clients ask me that about, like, or they feel like that about happiness too. Like, they feel like, oh, once I do this, like, I'll be happy. Or once they achieve something, then they'll be happy. But then they're always like trying to go for the next thing, and then that happiness just doesn't arrive. And so, yeah. But so the last one, and I'll leave it at this, is if someone watching this video is on the fence about starting therapy, what advice would you give them?
Ooh, that's a good one.
And I know therapists in the comments too, so y'all feel free to drop some little nuggets of wisdom in there too. We'll read them off at the end.
I love that. I think if somebody's watching this and is on the fence about therapy, I would give them the advice that I would tell them that there's somebody out there for them. Just like I said earlier, there's somebody out there that will be there for them, that will be a good fit for them, that will listen to them. Your therapist is not always going to get it right. Your therapist is not perfect. Your therapist is not a robot. Your therapist is a person, and the person makes mistakes. Like, but the right person will want to grow that relationship with you and develop that with you, and will do what they need to do to help you feel as safe and secure in that as you can. I would tell them that they're loved, and that they're human, and that all of them is valid. I would tell them that it can be really scary and vulnerable and hard, and I know that, and I totally get that. It's not easy, like, showing up somewhere, being, like, trying to be your authentic self. It's kind of like what Brene talks about. Brene Brown, she talks a lot about, like, you know, the courage to show up, right? Like, the courage to, like, be who you are, and how much vulnerability that takes, and how much courage that takes. And it takes a lot, like, to let somebody see you for all of you. And I would tell people that I totally acknowledge that it's scary, and it's hard, and it's nerve-wracking, and that there are people out there that, like, want to know you, and want to love you, and want to hear your story, and want to walk that journey with you. And I would encourage them, if they have had a hard time, like, finding a therapist, to just, like, keep trying, and keep putting yourself out there, and keep manifesting, like, keep putting out there that, like, what you're wanting. Like, it's kind of like dating. Like, every time you go on a date, like, somebody out there, you've been on, okay, I've been on a lot of bad dates. That's actually would be a really good IG live, Taylor. We could talk about dating as a therapist. Okay. But that's, side note, that's a different live for a different day. Every bad date, I've been on some bad dates. Every bad date that I went on taught me more and more about what I didn't want, right? It didn't always tell me what I did want. I wasn't even sure. I was like, I don't really know what I want in a man, but I know I don't want that, right?
But it ain't that. Whatever that was is not it.
It ain't that. That eventually, like, led to, like, my fiance, right? And when I was like, oh wow, he doesn't have any of the things that I don't want. That was like the first thing. I was like, all the things that I like don't want in somebody, he like doesn't have that. That's cool, right? Like, and that helped me realize when I found something that I did want, right? Like, Carl, what the fuck?
Yeah. We see you in the comments.
We see you, Carl.
I'm gonna talk today. Oh my God. We see you in the comments, Carl. I was gonna call him Assistant Carl.
Assistant Carl. My assistant, God bless him. No, but like that, I look at therapy as like very similar, right? Because it's like it's very similar in terms of like the intimacy that we have like with people, right? Like the shared emotional connection, the dependency, like that, like, hey, I can depend on you to show up every week. Like I can depend on you to be there. I can depend on you to like give me love and right? Like there's a lot of it's weird to think about, but there's a lot of very similar qualities that are in a therapeutic relationship that kind of mirror like other very serious relationships in our lives, and dating being one of them. So I would encourage somebody who's discouraged about finding a therapist, or they have a hard time finding somebody that works with them and that they like and that they fit well with, like just keep trying, because every time you go meet with a new therapist and you're like, oh, that I mean, that's going to inform you for the next one. And then when you will find somebody out there that like will be able to walk the journey that you want to walk, whatever that looks like, we're out there. So I would encourage them to hard. Yeah, we see you, we see your struggle. They know it's tough.
You said that so well. Well, there's some people gonna watch this video and they're just gonna slide right into your DMs and they're gonna slide right into your AFC inbox. So I imagine you're gonna get so many people wanting to reach out and be on your caseload from this, because this was just a lovely conversation, and I need to have you on here some more, because you can really connect with people, and goodness, we just have so many things to talk about. Literally, girl, we were like 45 minutes. What time is it?
It's 8:42. We're 42 minutes over.
God bless us. Oh my God. Okay.
God bless. Oh my gosh. No, I am so grateful to you, Taylor, for inviting me and giving me this like opportunity. Like it's been, first off, I just adore you. Like, can I just gas you up for a second? Like, you're one of the most amazing, like authentic, fun, encouraging therapists that I know. You're one of the most amazing, fun, just people I know. Like Tay and I just seriously, like you guys, we'll go out to, the first time we like hung out, we went to dinner, we went to Chewy's. We literally were at Chewy's, y'all, for like 4.5 hours. Okay. Like, sorry, hey, like battery low. Okay. Like we literally sat and like closed Chewy's down and then went in the parking lot and kept talking. Like, because we just connect so well. Like Taylor's just such a beautiful person that like you could spend time with. Like, you know, I love Taylor so much, and like I'm so grateful for this opportunity. I'm so grateful for your friendship. Like it's just been a blast getting to know you, and like, you know, I love AFC very much. Anybody who knows me knows that like I will sing the praises of AFC for like now until forever. But one of the things that like really I'm grateful for with AFC is like the friendships that it's brought into my life, and like the opportunity to like meet other people who are like just freaking awesome. And like I'm trying to not cuss on this and trying to keep it like PG, but you know that's hard for me sometimes. But like I'm just so grateful, honestly, because like I just don't know. I don't know. It's like weird to think about you not being in my life. Like it's so weird now to like think of a time like without Taylor. So I'm just grateful for you. I appreciate you so much. And I definitely want to do this again. We totally need to do this again. I feel like there's a lot to discuss. And
yeah.
Time I'll let you go first more.
Well, I would certainly appreciate that, because you are hard to follow up from. Let me just say. Talk about, oh my God. Well, this was just lovely. There was a reason why I chose you to be first, the first little person on these little talk series. You're just a lovely soul, and everyone here knows that. That's why they're all here. But you're just a huge light, and you're changing so many lives, and just by being your freaking self. And that's the best way I can explain it. And everybody else knows this.
Don't make me cry.
Thanks for just being
Don't
you.
Makeup, girl. I spent a lot of time on this one tonight.
You and your 30 pallets, man. Oh my God. Okay. But thank you for just being here. And people are going to see this. People are going to love you. And we'll have you back on to continue more conversations.
Yes. And I also want to thank, too, just like everybody for tuning in tonight. Like, it's super fun to just get, I don't know, like, it's just, I appreciate that, like, everybody showed out to, like, just hear what we had to say and learn a little bit more about, like, therapy and therapists and mental health. Like, that's one of my big things, too, that I'm really passionate about is, like, not just destigmatizing, like, mental health in general, but also, like, destigmatizing therapists. Like, I think I have a really big passion for, like, destigmatizing, like, what does it mean to be a therapist, and like, what does a therapist have to be, and like, what does that mold have to look like we don't have to all do that. And the groups of people that came tonight, especially some of the therapists that I know that came out, like, you know, you guys do a really great job of exemplifying that, you know, and like, it takes all kinds and it takes all people, and like, I just am really grateful to like be walking that journey with y'all. And I don't know, like, it's just special. I don't remember where I was going with this about like destigmatizing therapists, but oh yeah, being myself. Yeah. I think it's just really important. Like, so important to just like be yourself, you know, like that's all I can do. I don't have the time or energy to be like anything else, honestly. I'm like, oh, that sounds like effort trying to be somebody I'm not. Oh, that's hard. Like, I don't have it, you know. All I have is
a lovely live. This was so much better than I anticipated it being. We got some awesome questions and some hard questions, but I'm so glad that someone asked them, because those are the questions that we need. We need those hard questions because that's what people are asking. People want to know the answers to those hard questions. So I'm not sure who you all are. I know, Sarah, you know most of these people. I know this is your fan club. Let's be honest, you got a fan club just because it's you. But yeah, no, these were wonderful questions. So thank you all for tuning in. Thank you all for being vocal and asking questions. Thanks for all our coworkers for showing up here. We see you.
Love it.
And love you all, and we will catch you in the future on another live. Have a good Friday evening. Bye.
Oh, bye.